Buzzstone's AirWaves. Hey, this is Buzz with episode 27 of AirWaves, and it's another closet classic. I dug this old receiver out of the closet to give you a look at it. It's a Midland 11-500 shortwave receiver. And this radio is very special to me. I've had it a very, very long time. I bought it in, I believe it was 1969. It could have been 70, but I think 69. And I was the second owner. And really this video is as much about the person I bought the radio from as it is the radio. But to tell you a little bit more about this, it is a solid state receiver built by Midland, made in Japan. Of course, you know, solid state was something kind of new still in the late 60s. As I said, I bought this used, and it was only slightly used. I just looked on eBay a little while ago to see if there were any of these on there, and there were actually a couple on there. I saw one that's they're selling it for $39 plus shipping, and I believe I paid, I think it was around $25, which in 1969 was no small change, and I believe the original owner paid about $30 for that. But just to give you a quick run over, it's the Midland 11-500, and it has you know, it's starting to show its age. It's over 50 years old, but it still functions. It does have a very dirty volume pot here, so I've already got it pre-adjusted because it's really kind of hard to get it into a spot where it's not making a bunch of noise. And I either need to get in there and see if I can clean it, and that will fix it. I'm kind of doubting it, though. I think maybe I may have to actually replace the potentiometer in there. Then we have an on-off switch, and then we have a standby receive switch, and then we have the BFO, beat frequency oscillator, if you want to tune in some Morse code. And I was switching this in and out, and it does not appear to work anymore. I could not see a difference with it engaged or disengaged. The only other problem with it, that you see there's lights, display lights here. There's actually a third one over here. I did open it up about a week or so ago and looked in it. That bulb is burned out, and so I may actually go in there and replace that at some time too. And then you have a band spread here, and then you have your main tuning. And I'll turn it on here. I've got it in standby mode. And it has 3 shortwave bands plus the AM broadcast band. And this is on shortwave 2 right now. Or excuse me, shortwave 1. Let me make sure about that. That's 2. No, it was actually on shortwave 2. I'll tune. As you can see, I've got it connected to my 80-meter dipole, just with some jumper wires. And this radio has always been a good receiver. It's always picked up plenty of stations, even when I bought it in '69. I mean, I was a kid, and I never had more than just a random length wire connected to it. Was always able to pick up a lot of stations. And back then, you know, shortwave was a lot more active than it is now. I think that's Radio Cuba. They're always come in strong. But yeah, still working after 50 plus years. Has a side speaker here. I would say it's about a 4.5-inch speaker. There's a headphone jack in the back, and then you have 2 thumb screw type terminals one for the antenna and one for an earth ground. And I have both of those connected at the time. So, and as I said, this radio has a lot of special meaning to me, not so much because, you know, it's a fantastic radio or anything, but it served me well all these years. But I bought it, I believe it was 69, and I was 12 years old. And the guy I bought it from, and I'm going to give you his full name because he's passed on. He's what we call an amateur radio hobby, a silent key. His name was Emmett Dotson. Emmett, I grew up in a very small farm town in Indiana, and we had about 1,800 people. And Emmett was the local ham radio operator. As far as I know, he was the only one there in town. He was the only one I was aware of. Emmett was also the one of two local TV dealers, and he ran his business out of his house. He sold televisions and radios too. That's why I bought this radio. But Emmett was a really special guy. As kids, my cousin and I, we were the same age, and we would always drop by Emmett's TV shop. Like I said, he ran it out of his, basically out of the garage of his house. And he would always give us the boxes that TVs came in. And back then, TVs were large because they had these what they call console TVs. They were really as much a piece of furniture as they were a television set. And he would give us these boxes, and we would take them home and make forts out of them. You know, we would put them together and make tunnels, and just had a ball just playing with a cardboard box. And Emmett was also the local play-by-play announcer for Little League Baseball, Minor League, Little League, and Babe Ruth Baseball. So I grew up playing baseball, and Emmett was always there. He was the guy, like I say, doing the play-by-play. And he was really cool, even though he was an older guy, you know, to us. He was cool because between innings, he had a cassette tape player, and he had recorded the top 40 hits, you know, that were current at the time, and he would play those in between innings. So, you know, we really liked him because of that. And like I say, we grew up with him always being the play-by-play guy because, you know, a lot of us kids, we played baseball in a small town. You know, there aren't a whole lot of things to do. So a lot of people participated in that. And as we got older, we learned, my cousin and I learned about his hobby, ham radio, and he would let us come into his ham shack, radio shack every once in a while, you know, and watch him talk, and we just thought that was the coolest thing. Well, my cousin, I mean, he really got bit by it, and Emmett tutored him, and coached him along, and my cousin got his ham radio license at a pretty young age. I don't know exactly how old he was, but you know, before that we were into CB radio. Of course, it got really hot there in the 70s, but even in the 60s, most people that we knew that had a radio had a CB radio, not a ham radio. So like I say, you know, Emmett was like the guy who was like a cut above. And like I say, he taught my cousin and enabled him to get his ham radio license. And I didn't get one at that time. I had the CB radio. But, you know, Emmett is one of the guys that just exemplifies, I think, the hobby of ham radio, and somebody that was willing to go the extra mile to help you out. So, like I say, that's the reason why this radio has a lot of meaning to me, and that's why I've held on to it, I guess, for all these 50-some years. And here it is, still sitting here on my radio work table, and still working, barely in some aspects, but it is still working. So again, I just thought you might like to take a look at it. It's a Midland 11-500. There's still some floating around for sale out there on eBay, so I think that testifies as to how good a radio it was. And of course, back then a lot of things like this were made in Japan, whereas, you know, nowadays it's China. Back then it was Japan. but still kicking, and if I ever needed it, I know it would work for me. So this is Buzz with episode 27, another closet classic. This is kind of a closet classic and a radio tale rolled all into one. And hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave them down below, and be sure to subscribe, share, and like the video, and I'll see you down the dial.